Okay, so we are live. Namaste, ma'am.
Namaste.
And welcome to the learning experience conversations that we have every Friday.
Thank you for inviting me.
So that people can kind of mull over the insights over the weekend and get better with their thought process and their thinking. So as you know, the format is very simple. For the
Right.
first 45 to 50 minutes, E2 would have a conversation with you as our co-founder and host, and I'll be a fly on the wall, and then pretty much kind of be listening in to the entire conversation, because I would join in the last 15 to 20 minutes to
All right.
provoke some thoughts about what really needs to be reformed in the education sector, schools, colleges, etc., including the mindsets of parents, teachers, and students, the holy trinity as we call them in the
Okay.
Rex Karmovir parlance. So over to you, Itu, and I'll see you all later. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Namaste once again, Kanchanji. And thank you so much.
Namaste.
We are absolutely honored to have you with us this evening. And I look forward to talking to you and bringing some wonderful insights for each one of us, or everyone who's watching this program and will watch, because it's going to stay on our Facebook page forever and ever. And we intend to use the learnings from each and every school or academic school leader who's part of our journey and part of our community to learn. And I'm going to come back to you as a school leader of Mayo Girls College in Ajmer, all of that later. But I'm going to go back to you as, as a young girl or young person. Share with us insights about your growing up. What was it like? And did you feel that you're going to be a teacher, an educator, when you were very young? Or was it by an accident that, you got into this profession of teaching? Take me through that journey.
All right. Well, I can't say I got into this by accident at all, because ever since I remember, and especially when I walk down memory lane and look at those old black and white photographs, ever since I was God knows how high, I can be seen teaching my dolls, starting from that stage. So teaching my dolls, teaching my friends, always enjoying myself teaching. I loved playing teacher.
Right.
And I think my parents, I think I owe a lot to my parents for being the sort of parents they have been. Very, very sensitive, and a very non-imposing set of parents. And they just saw that I so enjoyed the experience of, playing this game and studying by playing teacher as well, that I remember one fine day my father just went out and purchased a blackboard for me. It was a very small gesture, but it again reinforced in me the idea of how beautiful this vocation was all about. And that blackboard stayed with me for years and years and years and years, and it was passed down to my niece after that. So teaching was definitely not by accident. In fact,
Yeah.
at a time, in the early 80s or whatever, when people didn't really think teaching was the best option at all, as a vocation, they would say, oh, there's not enough money in it, it's hardly interesting, and why do you want to go in for it? My parents just said, follow your heart. If that's what you want, go ahead. So I think I've been given a lot of freedom of choice. So when I think of my childhood, a lot of freedom of choice and a lot of faith and trust which my parents reposed in me, that the decisions you take, we will stand by them. You will learn by taking those decisions. So I had a very happy childhood, I would say. And of course, they were there to guide me. I'm not saying you're given a free hand and there's no one to guide you, but
Yeah.
they were there to observe you. They were there to see, okay, what is it that makes my daughter tick? What is it that makes her love, what she does? So teaching was definitely not by accident. I think they built on something which I enjoyed doing ever since, I was 2 years old or whatever, so that's how it was. So yes, that is basically the way I got into teaching ever since I was a child, into a more formal way, of course, when I grew up. Uh, that was the way it happened.
So those formative years of just playing
Yes,
teacher and
yes,
getting encouragement from home, and as Jerry just said, that we believe, and there's this holy trinity: school, teacher, school, and parents. They just
yes,
mold you and help you to become who you become, because it's a very
Yes.
integral part of the impressions that we carry as children.
Very
So
true.
did, even the school that you went to and all that, did that also shape you into, who you were to become like a school leader later in your later years?
Um, I would say to a certain extent, yes, when you're given positions of leadership in school, of course, and
Mm,
guided gently towards fulfilling a role which carries with it a lot of responsibility. I was a prefect, I was a house captain, so yes, there was that sort of grooming which happened. I had a
mm,
wonderful principal, a
mm,
principal who was very, very sensitive.
mm,
Um, and, like, for example, I used to dance, and if I had a program, she would come and see that program. She
mm,
would come to the wherever it was being staged, and she would come. So, these little things stay with you, that the principal made the time. Okay, a principal has a lot of things on her platter, but she made the time to come. I
mm,
remember stories of some of my teachers, and honestly, I did not grow up in a time when education was truly child centric. It wasn't. It was more a teacher centric system in the 70s and in the
mm,
early 80s. However, there are one or two teachers who stand out. For example, in class 5, I still remember I did very well in this test, this history test. And what did my teacher do? She just told me, Kanchan, why don't you teach your friend who's finding it difficult to understand this topic? Oh my goodness, I felt fantastic. I felt I have that ability. So, that's also you're giving the onus of responsibility to someone. You're telling a girl of class 5, yes, you can lead the way when it comes to helping this child. And
right.
she gave me a book. She also gave me a book. She said, why don't you read this? Because the was on Napoleon Bonaparte. And she said, read this book. And
Mm,
it just made such a lot of difference to your self-esteem. It made so much difference to the way you viewed things. And what struck me was the sensitivity which she had brought to it, to the whole episode. And
mm,
it did a lot for one's confidence. So when one looks at leadership also, I feel these are components of leadership. We have learned it perhaps not in a very obvious way, but
yeah.
being sensitive, being there for one another, all that is part of leadership. Not that you just use a rod and ride roughshod over others. That's not my idea of leadership at all.
Absolutely.
So so these little, yes, I would say my school had I mean, in that to that extent, I owe a lot to my school. I loved my school. I really loved my school. And I mean, my entire schooling was in that one school, right from, what would be called junior KG or whatever, nursery, sorry, till class 12. So, and we were loyalists of our school, die-hard loyalists. And we were because we loved it. And we loved it because we were treated such in a certain way. So, yes, I
I'm
think
sure
school
your
played a role.
teachers or your principal, if listening in, would feel very, very nice. And I say that even today, the investments that you make as a teacher in your teaching life or with
Yes.
your children, that's an investment that gives you dividends all your life. Children come
Very
back
true.
in the most surprising, warm way. And also,
Very true.
the things that we talk about in Rex Karamveer and in all the programs that we do, that great parents make great leaders. And as you
Yes.
say that, your parents have always, in a very beautiful way, helped you to find your own
Yes.
passion, find your own
Yes.
heart, find your own path in a way.
Very true. Very
Helped
true.
path. And that's so, so important. So, teachers and parents play such a beautiful, wonderful, important role in molding and shaping up the child. I'm going to
Yes.
move um, to the times when you were teaching at a very premium institute. I would say it's not just a premium institute, forces institute in the country, but I think it's a very premium institute all over the world, National Defense Academy. And uh, being there as a lecturer, and I'm sure the experience must have been different, because here you're
Yes.
teaching set of young, hardy, resilient boys
Yes.
who are going to
Yes.
be officers in the forces, Navy, Army,
Yes.
Air Force,
Yes. Yes.
and they have a different energy level. They
Oh,
have a different,
yes.
uh, an English class or any other subject is fun times, or I don't know what it is. I mean, I know the stories of all that. So how was the experiences? I'm sure those were most amazing and most different experiences that you must have ever had anywhere as a teacher.
Yes. Yes.
Share
Definitely.
that.
Yes.
Also a very regimented life, but
It
the
is. Yes.
classroom English teacher is one of those, glamour classes, glamour teaching. Tell me about that.
Well, yes, NDA was a fabulous experience, I would say. I think I learned a lot. The
Mhm.
cadets taught me a lot. The
I'm
way
sure
they approach life, you were right when you said it is a very, very tough, regimented life. In
they
fact,
have.
your heart goes out to them when you
I know.
see what they're put through. Of course, those boys can be very, very naughty because,
I,
they had this thing that, oh, a lady, and we were called lady instructors, lady lecturers.
I,
And let's try and talk about, oh, the woes of our life, our lives here at NDA. Perhaps, she will be very, very sympathetic. They didn't find that, of course. Like they'd say, oh man, I fell off the horse today. I said, fine, all right, take it in your stride. If they felt they were going to get undue sympathy, not at all. But it was like that. And they were great fun, their crazy sense of humor and whatnot. But one was, honestly, if one looks at it in perspective, teaching the cream of the intellect as well, because these were boys who had got into the academy after tough entrance tests and
absolutely.
the service selection, the SSB and
Yes,
whatnot. So
yes.
these were not, that way they were different. When I compared them with a boy in a civilian college, well, the boys in civilian colleges had that carefree attitude.
Right.
The boys here in NDA were very different. They would tell me that, ma'am, once we graduate from NDA, we go to IMA or we go to the Air Force Academy, wherever we go. After that, we are going to be sent on the most perilous missions because we are going to be the toughest, we're going to be the fittest.
Yeah.
In fact, when I bumped into some of my cadets and who had become officers at the IMA later on, a
Mm.
couple of them had actually passed away. So it hits you hard as to
Very
what life is all about.
right.
Uh, but whilst they were in the academy, there was one thing which they taught me, and that is stuck with me for life. And they said, ma'am, it is all mental. So I said, what do you mean by that? So they said, ma'am, if your mind says you can do it, you can do it. If your mind just says impossible, even if you're the best soldier, the best officer, but you don't have the will to do it, nothing is going to happen. And honestly, I think that is so true. It is
Yeah.
so true. That's my biggest learning, which I've taken from my cadets. And I was greatly involved in their lives, whether it was an inter-battalion quiz, whether it was a passing out parade, equestrian display for which I would do the commentary. So I would be with them whilst they were doing practices, for a couple of months. One saw their resilience, one saw their strength. The way they would talk about death, I mean,
Yeah.
it shocks you.
Yes.
You'd have an Air Force cadet and an Army cadet talking to me about what is death, ma'am. And, it would hit you. That's when you constantly said, okay, a 21-year-old in a college, a civilian college, and a
Yeah.
21-year-old at NDA, there is such a marked difference.
Yeah.
And these were the same boys who were supremely talented because we would have inter-battalion competitions and they sang beautifully, danced, acted, whatever the works, so there was a lot of fun, there was a lot of seriousness. There was it Because they were very bright boys. There were a lot of academic intellectual challenges, which is very good for a teacher to face,
Yeah.
and which one kept learning, one kept studying, which I found was very satisfying. Yes, it was regimented, so there was a lot of strictness about punctuality. And
Yeah.
there were days when I had lectures at 6:30 in the morning. I
And
lived in Pune. The distance to NDA was 15 kilometers. I traveled by the Pune Municipal Transport bus, no NDA bus. Bless
yeah.
me if I were reach 1 minute late. I could reach half an hour early, but not 1 minute late because the deputy commandant would be on his rounds. So, it taught me a lot because in India, we're very poor on punctuality. We're
Yeah.
quite poor on regularity, punctuality, these things. So
Yes.
NDA was absolutely different. And then at the POP, I've been a liaison officer for the reviewing officer's wife. That again was a different area of responsibility which I had, which
Mm.
I shouldered. So at the end of the day, I felt it was very satisfying. And also at the end of the day, I found that these boys were also as vulnerable as anybody else. There was a system of counselors in NDA as well. Or you could see their vulnerability where it came to something called the NDA ball. There's
Yes.
the NDA ball for the passing of parade batch, and suddenly you'll have this boy who's supposed to be, he's considered to be the smartest of the smart in the academy. He's a position holder, and he comes to me, he says, oh man, help me, and I shared a nice rapport with these boys, and they would say, I don't even know how to talk to a girl, please tell me, what do I say?
Yes.
Things like that.
Yeah.
So yes, they're very pleasant memories. A lot of learning, I think, for me, a lot of learning from that experience at NDA.
So that was a very, very beautiful account of what you say, because I come from a very small town which is predominantly Air Force and Army. I come from Ambala.
I
And
see. Uh-huh.
I have a lot of family in the Army, and my brother's been to India. So I can actually, and I've had a lot of friends in the Army. So, I
I
can
see.
actually say that, they would be so hardy in their
Yes.
body and mind, but they could
Yes.
be absolutely vulnerable. And
Yes.
let's talk about this beautiful mindset that you talk, that beautiful vulnerability is the power of the powers, because it unleashes so many other mindsets and powers that are within each one of
True.
us.
True.
And what these young boys in the National Defense Academy, the cadets, have is never say never. That's what they
Yes.
never say never. And
Yes.
that's the kind of resilience that we all need.
Very
Thank you.
true.
That was wonderful. It kind of took me back also into the memory lane. I'm
Yes.
also very interested to know that, you have had a very beautiful journey, like a Montessori diploma. You
Yes.
Holland, you are an IBDB trained into disciples. You have had a plethora of experiences, like, a lecturer in an organization like NDA, which very, very few people get to experience, because it's such a premium institute. Very few English teachers, and they're all the officers as instructors. Then, as a Montessori IDBP, tell me all about that. This whole
Yes.
basket, I must say that.
Well, yes, I think I'm very blessed that I've had an opportunity to study different methodologies of education, different approaches to education. I can't say I've practiced all. For the Montessori, for example,
Mhm.
which was a very intensive 1 year course,
Mhm.
I learned a lot. But you see, Montessori is basically for children of the age from 2.5 to 6. Um, I did not ever venture into the Montessori field of education as an educator, but the learnings
Mhm.
from Dr. Montessori's philosophy of education are relevant even today. And one of the most important things which she said, and she's written books, of course, she was the first lady doctor of Italy in the late
Mhm.
19th century. And it's very fascinating. She talks about freedom in education. She
Mhm.
talks about, which is why she left Italy when Mussolini came to power, when you had dictators in the early 20th century. So she talks about freedom, the spirit of freedom to bring out the best. Secondly, she wrote this very interesting book, which is called The Absorbent Mind. So the mind is constantly absorbing. She said, you see a child in the crib, and if you
Mhm.
think that because the child can't articulate his or her thoughts, the
Mhm.
child is blank, you're sadly mistaken. The
Right.
child is absorbing. The child is absorbing everything from around
Right.
his or her environment. And at an opportune moment, according to the physical development of the child will articulate the
Right.
thoughts, which is why what a big responsibility there is on adults as to
Right.
how we handle a child who is so small, and of course how you handle children also at a later age. So I learned a lot with respect to educational psychology. How should we treat children? No one is a zero. I think it makes us understand, you've got to shed your arrogance to think that because you are of a certain age, you know it all, and that you
Absolutely.
can lord it over everyone. You can't lord it over even a child. and there's so much which I learned from her. The IBDP, the diploma program, was very interesting. The whole approach of the IBDP is different, because it is the onus of learning. Yes, a lot is on the person concerned, a lot of research, again, a lot of independent thought processes, independent thinking. Usually, conventional methods of education in our country talk about one road to achieving one answer, for example. Right?
Right.
Here you have a whole lot of options, as long as you can substantiate your theories with facts.
Right.
And another aspect of the IB, which is great, is that it makes the educator take the back seat, the formal educator. For
Right.
me, honestly, when I use the word educator, I've always said it's a
Hmm.
two-way process. The guru is the student, the guru is also the teacher,
Absolutely.
and it is that is the way in which we actually learn. It's a learning process. In fact, Montessori dislikes the word teach because it's heavy. It dislikes the word school because it's heavy. In fact, Montessori talks about a house of children. That's the nomenclature they use, because unfortunately certain words have certain connotations in one's cultural history, where you think the teacher means she's the one who is supreme, which is not true. And in fact, I remember when I joined Wellham Girls, this was in 2001, and I remember telling the girls, children, we're here to learn from one another.
Right.
And the girls stared at me and they said, what can you learn from us? And it hit me that Indian conditioning is such that
Right.
if the teacher doesn't give the whatever information or doesn't direct a class, then the class honestly doesn't the class loses its importance or value, which is not so. So even the IBDP believes a lot in the students who, directing a lot of the way the knowledge would flow in a class. And of
Hmm.
course, the teachers are trained. We are there to facilitate learning.
True.
And of course, we must have the knowledge of what we're doing. For example, I'm an IBDP teacher in history. In history, I
Hmm.
select certain papers in which I specialize. Of course, I need to know what I'm talking about. But it
Absolutely.
is not that I impose my views. And at the IBDP level, I was also appointed as a theory of knowledge. They've got something called theory of knowledge, a
Right.
theory of knowledge coordinator, wherein you have a lot of discussions. It's
Hmm.
actually talking about higher order thinking skills, where you actually examine knowledge,
Hmm.
you actually dissect knowledge. And if a discussion, for example, is happening on the Holocaust,
Hmm.
right, and you've got students in the class, and I asked one of my superiors, and I said, if a student stands up and says the Holocaust was good, aren't I supposed to intervene? Because we were told you've got to be more in the wings rather than on the main stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I said, aren't I supposed to intervene? So the person said, no, you will not, because you just see how another student will direct the conversation. So it is a beautiful process of understanding yourself as an individual. And the way the learning flows, it is very different. It is definitely very different. I just also, they also have something called a profile of a student, a
Hmm.
profile of a teacher, and
Hmm.
the mission statement of the IBDP, and in
Hmm.
which one of the most beautiful things in that is that I will tolerate opinions of others even if I don't agree with them, and I will tolerate them with dignity. And honestly, today, the world in which we live is a world in which tolerance is so low. We don't respect differences. We don't, it doesn't come easily to us. So when one reads all this, the philosophy of the system of education, it strikes home, and you feel that there's a lot to credit it with. And it was really good. It opens up a new way of looking at things, not only in education, I think in life.
Life.
It's not only a method of education or an approach to education. It is the way one looks at such things in life. And I think those are learnings which have to stay with us. In fact, a child comes to school not just to study, not just to pass an exam. In my
Absolutely.
opinion, 1% of the responsibilities we shoulder are around delivery of a subject or curriculum, but 99% is that molding of character and
Absolutely.
walking the talk. and being good human beings and being models of that, not being hypocrites, but just walking the talk so that children imbibe. There's so much more to education than just subjects. I mean, this is something which we need to shrug off now and say that it's got a much wider, the panorama is much wider than what we have always perceived it to be. So,
Absolutely.
and I think good methods of education have always brought this out.
So, you so wonderfully have weaved that learning, because we at Rex have always been talking about it. It's your character that takes you forward, not your
Yes,
competence. I don't
very
remember
true.
20 years or maybe 25 or more, anybody asked me, how many marks did you get in your 12th or your 10th?
Exactly. Very
It's
true.
just being stone to what you make. And also,
Right.
the tolerance thing that you talked about. I
Yes.
think that needs to be a mantra in life. And uh,
Yes.
we have such nimble minds, and we need to use
Yes.
nimble hands and our articulation or our ways to kind of mold a child. It's a very, very beautiful yet very tough job in the hands of
Yes.
teachers, to be
Yes.
able to be sensitive enough to take that forward. And I
Yes.
also, one thing that you said, that learning is what is important.
Yes.
It's not just passing an exam or learning a subject. Learning happens at every level, and learning can
Yes.
come from anyone. And I say that, I've been a teacher. A teacher in me remained because a student in me remained, because
Yes.
learning, unlearning and relearning has to go on and on. And
Very
that's been
true.
the mantra. Although I quit teaching 12 years back, but I think the teacher or education or things like that, I never went away from there. It kept coming
Right.
back in my life.
Yes.
um, I'm also going to move to another area of your life, which I find very beautiful and fascinating. And I also feel that, art form to teach and to learn is such a wonderful way of imbibing so many, many qualities or learnings into a child life. And you yourself are a Kathak dancer.
Mm.
Uh, Tell me about your journey as a Kathak dancer. You've been a performer, and how much that has molded you into becoming this leader that you have, and what kind of art forms do you feel should be a part of learnings in school, because you have seen it in your life that art form or performing arts or any kind of art for that matter
Mm.
is very, very beautiful medium or very impactful medium of learning as well.
Yes. I think any art form is a means of self-expression, and each and every individual should choose that art form which relates to, I would say, the upliftment of the soul for that person. It
Absolutely.
is, I mean, dance for me was very uplifting. I started learning dance, how to dance ever, I don't know how old was I don't remember also now. It seems such a long time ago, but that's how it was. And
Huh.
initially I was with Mrs. Amla Shankar's dance troupe.
Hmm.
So, the very famous late Uday Shankar's wife, she ran this beautiful dance school. And interestingly enough, one had Kathak, one had Bharatnatyam, all those forms of classical dance. But she
Hmm.
had a very interesting component called creative dance. So she would
Right.
just play some music and she
Hmm.
would say, all right, what sort of dance will you be able to create to match this music, which
Hmm.
would complement this music? So there again, it is not a set pattern of steps or mudras or anything that is there in classical dance, true, but you bring the learning of your classical dances into a creative dance space, and that was a challenge,
Hmm.
and that was also interesting. And
Hmm.
it so it's, challenges come not only from a subject and the written word and the facts and figures and subjects, it comes from this as well. And and then we would rise to the occasion and we would create something interesting. And so that was very interesting, till I
Hmm.
went into, of course, actual kathak, and I was under a very famous dancer again, Guru Rani Karna, and with whom, of course, I did perform. And as I said, dance was very, very uplifting. I feel even today, for all professionals, for all children, any art form, uh, it enhances your creativity, true. Um, it's a very uplifting experience. It's a very empowering experience for a
Mm.
person as well. That's
Absolutely.
what I feel. And one has to play to one's strengths. So whether it's drawing, sketching, painting, I won't even say that there is a hierarchy in the art forms. There isn't. It's drama. I love drama. I loved acting, for example. I used to be I'm public speaking and debating, etc., were also domains I was interested in. And dance, of course, dance. And till date, I unfortunately I left dance. This is something I tell my girls. I said,
Mm.
don't commit mistakes which I made. When
Mm.
in those days, again, those days, I'm talking about as if I'm from antiquity or God knows what, as if I'm an old relic. But
Oh, you
what
are.
but what I'm trying to say is, say so many years ago, the
Yeah.
focus was firstly, we never had mentors in the truest sense of the word, like we have today, where there's a lot of channelizing of your energies here, there, and everywhere. For me, of course, my biggest mentors, my greatest friends were my parents. They were
Mm.
all for me to do everything possible, and they
Mm.
gave me all the opportunities. It's my failing that I didn't pursue it to the level which I should have. So these are lessons from my life. I mean, I should have pursued it far more than I did. That's what I mean. And for a
Right.
longer time than I did. What
Mm.
happens is, after you get into higher education and into your career, you feel, let this be put on the back burner. And this is something which we should not do. If it's something which is your passion and you love, go ahead and pursue it as long as you honestly can, and for as long as you honestly can. So that is a regret in me. I used to play tennis. I didn't pursue that also as much as I should have. So
Mm.
these are lessons from my life. And
Mm.
honestly, another beautiful part of whether it's playing tennis or dance is they are stress busters. They're such
They-
beautiful stress busters, even
Yeah.
for people, even for an adult.
Age.
Besides answering your, besides relating to your creativity. So I tell my girls, I said, and I'm very frank and open with my children here or wherever I've taught. And I said, you mustn't ever do things, don't repeat mistakes which some of us adults have when we were your age. And it's always good to share. Again, this is a learning. This is what the way
Absolutely.
I look at it. This is a learning. So I share it with them that, I should have done much more than what I did, and I could have. But I put obstacles in my path, thinking from my thinking at that time that perhaps I would not be able to do justice to everything. When honestly, in retrospect today, I feel, of course, if I pushed myself slightly more, why not? I would have. I perhaps could have. So these are things. In fact, so children who graduate from Mayo Girls, when they come back to me, the first thing I ask, are you still playing cricket? And then they look at me, ma'am, no, college, this. I said, don't give me excuses. You better pursue it. Are you still dancing? Where's your Bharatnatyam? You've done an Arangetram. Are you or not dancing still, pursuing dance? Have you
Mm.
enrolled with a school of dance? No, ma'am, not possible. So things like that. So I think, yes, um, there's a lot I have learned from the performing arts. There is a lot. It's a value add to one's personality, to one's learning, to one's understanding of what life is. To learn from gurus, take that guidance. Even a person who teaches you a sport is your guru. Games
Absolutely.
itself have rules which teach you so much.
Lifeless.
And I think it just makes life, I think, it makes life more genteel. The gentleness in your life, that
Yeah.
softness in your life.
Yeah.
I think it makes life that as well.
Yeah.
So that's the way I view the performing arts. And given a chance, I'd put the clock back and uh,
I would
well, check the things which I should have done then.
I
So
would say it's never too late to pick up the threads where you left them, and you will surprise yourself and you will surprise your girls. And I feel that, creativity is such a beautiful way of mindfulness. It's a
yes,
spa. And I
it
think
is.
first, and as you said, that it's so great for your mental health, it's a stress,
Yes, yes,
gives
yes,
beautiful focus because you're loving what you're doing. And then when you do what you love, you give
yes.
all, and you give all your focus, and you detach yourself from a lot of things.
Very true.
So that's how creativity is all about. And I think each one of us is born with something that they are creative with. And in
Yes.
times to come, I think creative intelligence and emotional intelligence are the some of the attributes or some of the qualities that are more important than or empathy for that matter are more important than a lot of other things that we give a lot of weightage to in
Yes.
education or in life or as
Yes.
parents or teachers also. So there's that shift is slowly coming, but it is coming. And we at our program that we soft launched at Rex Karmir Education Change Champion, where your school was one of the
Yes.
schools, the International Volunteering Life Skills Scholars Fellowship. We talk about all these nuances that there is so much potential in each child. There's so much pure
Yes.
potential in each child, and that needs to be unleashed. And we, as parents, teachers, and schools, need to, give need to give a little bit of pressure to that, or we need to unfurl that so that children can harness that and better their lives and live a life which is complete and fruitful and
Very
happy
true.
and
Very true.
passionate.
And unfortunately, in our country, we tend to judge people only by marks. And we
That's
don't understand that you may be a brilliant sports person or a brilliant musician.
mm,
And how are you less than anyone else? Another
absolutely.
person has got 90%, you've got a 55 or a 60. But look at your strengths. We don't have we're very, I don't know, myopic or whatever. We just look at a person through one way with just I don't with one prism of judgment, and we've got to snap out of that. We
That's
have to.
so
that
important.
that is very important. That is extremely important.
And that's one of our endeavors at Rex Karambir through all our initiatives. That mind shift is so important because
Yes.
everyone is same. It's just that maybe some of them didn't get the opportunity, that
Yes.
may not be as fortunate in money or whatever to be
Yes.
able to groom that. But everyone
Very true.
has that potential. Nobody's potential is less than anyone else. And of course, the character plays a big, big role here.
Yes.
It's not your competence. You may have gone to Harvard or wherever.
Exactly.
It,
Exactly.
it
Very
has.
true. Yes. Yes.
I'm again going to come back to our Rex Karambir Global Fellowship, Rex Karambir Education Change Champion uh, Awards and Fellowship, where your school was part of it. How was your experience there? And also take me through the various social giving, because social giving is also something that is close to your heart, and your school
Yes.
is some wonderful initiatives. Tell me
Yes.
all of that, and how was the experience of being there? And I know that based on your social giving, and we at Rex believe that it's not just the education happening or learning happening within the four walls. The children
Yes.
need out go out in this world, look at the world, look at the adversities of the world, challenges,
Yes. Very
and be
true.
part of the solution. And those
Yes.
skills should be taught at the school level as well, because that's going to help them more than the school,
Yes.
the books or whatever. So
Yes.
to that,
Yes. Well, the experience first and foremost at that function was very nice, and it was wonderful to meet so many like-minded educators, to meet you, to meet the entire team, to listen to what was being said in the discussions, which was so relevant. Definitely, it was a wonderful experience, and thank you so much for inviting us for that.
I've
Uh,
earned it. Your school is doing such a wonderful job.
Thank you. And with respect to, yes, the sort of work one does um, to, I would say, alleviate suffering of people, to make life happier for many people, I find our children are very compassionate. This is something which I found very, it's a very um, it's a quality I've seen which cuts across the school and across different age groups. We are, of course, a school from class 4 to class 12, but I have seen children really very compassionate, not only towards people, interestingly, even towards animals and birds and everyone on the campus. If a bird gets injured, they'll come running to me and they'll say, "Ma'am, what can we do?" So that ability to care for others is something very strong. With respect to programs which the children have been involved in, um, of course, at the time of the pandemic, there were things that they did which were remarkable. That was their own initiative. They were all at home in their different areas, in different parts of the country, but they kept me informed. They try and raise money to feed migrant laborers. They would be donating, one child donated, I think, about 10 smartphones to a village school in Himachal because those children had no access. They would not have had access to learning if they did not have a device, and they didn't have the funds to purchase that. Now, here's a child who feels that, from within, that I need to do something about it. And I think that is important, that you feel from within that something has to be done, not that we sit back and watch what's happening around us. So, individual initiatives have been there, not only of children who are at present studying with us, but even of our alumni. And I
Right.
think the pandemic period actually revealed that in a very strong way. Otherwise, when one looks at school and what all the children are doing, we are associated with various organizations as an institution. We do a lot of work with people who are hearing impaired. And our children, of course, are divided into groups because you can't have 300, 400 children going to only one organization. And they go, they sit, they work, they share with these children. Where it comes to hearing impaired, they have something so beautiful our children organize, which is called a happy week, where for 1 week these children are with us. I mean, every week the children visit these organizations, but sometime in the calendar year, there's 1 week when these children are here with us throughout, and they're taught a lot of things. It could be cooking, it could be anything, dance, music, etc. And a lot of time is spent with them, and then they perform. And you get a lump in your throat when you see them perform. It's happened to me 1,001 times.
I
These
can imagine.
children can't hear at all. And there is music being played. They are dancing to that music without missing a beat. And they're doing it so beautifully. And how is that happening? And when we just turn around and see behind, our girls are there at the back and they are dancing, and these children are following the cue. And this has been one of the, I think, most touching experiences of my life, what I've seen. How the children here, they just feel so connected. They feel so connected with these people. And in fact, the organizations with which we work, last year for our prize giving, annual prize giving, we had invited them to be a part of the annual prize giving program on one of the days when we have a variety entertainment. I mean, again, they got virtually a standing ovation, where you have the hearing impaired students. We have an orphanage which we go to, where you have these little children who've been abandoned. Uh, you've had little girls who've been put through hell in life. You have, the smallest of the small. You'll have a slightly older child. And what's so beautiful, which is again a big learning for us? So community service is all very good, and we do a lot of that. But what is so beautiful is these are children who will smile. These are children who don't want your pity. These are people who want to go ahead in life. They make you realize so much that, I cried because I had no shoes till I saw someone who had no feet. And that means we are blessed. Imagine these people. So there's a lot that we have learned from them. We are also attached to a village. So when our children visit a village every day once a week, they work with the children of that village. They work with the seniors of that village also. In fact, they also conducted, a self-defense sort of program with the people in the village, so that the children, especially the women, would be able to defend themselves, God forbid, if there's any attack on them. So then we also work with people who are special children. So, they're slow learners, all that.
Right.
There's a lovely organization here in Ajmer. So children go there. And for the, when it comes to, as I said, welfare of animals, which our children are always in the forefront of, there is a
Right.
beautiful NGO.
Yeah.
And the children go there. So community service for the girls of Mayo Girls is for
Mm,
everyone.
mm,
And I remember one of my superiors in another school where I taught telling me that if a person has the ability to give of herself and take care of others, let us not suppress it.
yeah.
Let us not tell a person that, oh, it's a waste of time, don't do it. Because you're
Mm,
suppressing the spirit of giving, you're suppressing the spirit of compassion, and the world needs it today. The world needs it more than ever. And so I don't think our girls do it as an exercise, that, oh, it's a formality. They do it because their heart and soul is in it, and the teachers also. So it's a lovely thing. I remember when I was in an IB school in Pune,
mm,
I visited a home. I used to go regularly to a place where you had children who were abandoned. They were HIV positive children, and
mm,
today you went, they were there, you went the next week, maybe a person had passed away, a child had passed away. And when
right.
you taught those children, you had to be careful that I shouldn't have a pair of scissors with me, I shouldn't have this with me, all these do's and don'ts. But again, the one thing which struck me always was, look at the happiness on their faces. Their parents have abandoned them, everything, but these people are looking at life so positively. I mean, look at us, we complain about everything possible,
Absolutely.
everything. We just don't count our blessings. So the learning, I think, as adult, as a person, as an adult, I have learned a lot through whatever little social service I've done. And the children here also, hats off to them. It really, they have it in them, and may that compassion in them grow with time. And I hope the world doesn't make them cynical. Education means you must be idealistic. I believe in that very strongly, because around us idealism seems to be crumbling. A lot of people have become so cynical that you question yourself, that is it even worth thinking along these lines? But we must, otherwise there's going to be darkness. We have to have the courage to change.
Yeah.
We have to have the courage to bring about a change. We have to have the courage to charter that path, to lead that movement if need be. So I do hope what I see in our girls, which is so great, continues. And I'm sure they will. I hope so.
Yeah, and also the courage to speak up for right, wrong. One of our
Yes.
at Rex Karam is right every wrong, and
Yes.
together one we can right every wrong. That if we get together, we can absolutely right every wrong.
Very
And
true.
nicely enumerated about the social giving, and also the fact that we as adults, and I would confess that even as an adult, sometimes you go through your sad
Yes.
down times. You go
Yes.
through them and you talk about them, but then you rise above, because you have to rise above it, because you you are sitting in an ivory tower. I would say we are all sitting in
Yes.
ivory tower and just looking
Yes.
from there. But there is so much happening around us that we need to be there for them, and those are real learnings for all of
Very
us.
true.
I think
Very
we need
true.
to check, do the reality check, and I try and
Yes.
all the time myself that
Yes.
whenever I'm feeling low and down, I like, shut up, Itu, get over it,
Yes.
get good. You have to tell yourself, because
Yes.
being a moron
True.
kind.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I'm going to come to the COVID-19 times. Yours is a boarding school. Girls are
Yes.
sure missing the school, missing
Yes.
food, missing the campus, the teacher,
Yes.
their friends. How have these times been different, and how have you been going along and carrying along with what has to be done? Because I think the teachers and students and educational institutes have been showing such beautiful heroic resilience in these times, and they've risen to this occasion so wonderfully, the children, the parents, the teachers, because the show must go on.
Yes.
So tell me about that, and how is it happening and what's happening? And I know you are at campus, you've been on campus 6 months
Yes.
in one go. Some of your staff is also there. I know you're
Yes.
very beautiful.
Yes.
I could have been one of the Mayo school teachers if my husband would have not got posted out of Jaipur, but I do have the experience of being there and having being interviewed by this huge panel. Miss
Yes.
Jo was the principal.
Yes. Yes. That's
So
right.
all about this now.
Yes. Well, you're right, the campus is beautiful, but honestly today without the children it's so desolate.
I
And
can.
without the children, I think the school honestly is not what it is and it should be, because
Right.
they, I'm so used to just listening to this, that chitter chatter noise, walking up and down the corridor, knocking at my door, ma'am, can we come in and have a chat, and they crazy conversations and all that. So that is a horrible feeling now. I mean, it's a horrible feeling now that we don't have that, and we haven't had that for some time. And my and the children also keep telling me, just call us back please. Why can't you call us back? I tell them, well, it's easier said than done. Unfortunately, the situation being what it is. They said, ma'am, we just want to be back in school. Because their bonding with school, their friends is so strong. This is
Absolutely.
second home. I remember telling a Mayoite once, yes, this is your second home. She said, no, no, it's not our second home, it's our first home. So i
I,
said
I,
i
I
said
really,
all right, however you wish to put it. But yes, the times have been difficult, in the sense they've been unexpected. I think all challenges come without a warning, the coronavirus being one of them, the pandemic being one of them. And ever since the lockdown on the 25th of March, of course, things took a very, very different turn. And even though we live on one campus here, and of course a number of my colleagues are outside, but those of us living here, we also had to put a lot of restrictions on our movement. So literally,
yeah.
we were not really interacting with one another per se, except of course via WhatsApp or email or the call. Um, but we were there for one another.
Mm,
Everything was being taken care of, whether it was provisions or food. Those are the basics of life. That was there, and medicines, of course. I must salute the workers. We asked a few of our service staff to
mm,
stay back.
right.
And there were about 20 of them. So whether
Right.
we had to have the guards manning the gates, for example, and
Yeah.
a few people just to assist. And I
Mm,
salute them for being so resilient and for being so giving.
mm,
They said, no, we will stay back. And they stayed, what? They were here till the 17th of May, at least, when the
mm,
lockdown was lifted, or even later than that. So, a lot of respect and a lot of thanks to these people. Where it comes to teaching, where it comes to relearning, where it
mm,
comes to reinventing ourselves,
mm,
yes, now this was absolutely now unknown territory. Now,
mm,
what were we to do? Either one would say, okay, forget it, we'll just manage we'll just see, wait and watch. But we
mm,
decided as a community of teachers that no, we've got to get on with it. So we
mm,
started experimenting with online platforms.
mm,
And then, of course, we chose Google, etc. That's a different thing. And we started with our online classes. There were technical hitches, there were glitches, there were connectivity issues, especially
right.
for people who were living outside, where they were accessing the internet through their devices. At least in school, there is a more stable Wi-Fi system. But having said that, I mean, in the initial stage, teachers were so good. When I'm
Mm,
saying good, I'm talking about an attitude. Now, a lot of things we do in life depends on our attitude and being positive. We had
ab-
teachers who did not have access to a laptop, for example, or the
mm,
laptop was not supporting, say, new technology or what was required for this. They were teaching from their smartphones, using their smartphones. Now, I mean, I try and visualize how tough that must have been. The strain on the eyes,
yeah.
then you're trying to look at assessments of children I mean, the online assessments. But they did it. They did it because they have that zeal to do things for their children. They love their children.
Mm,
They were very clear that
mm,
the times were difficult, the times were challenging, but we
mm,
were not going to buckle under, right? The whole thing was we were there standing for our children and we were going to do our best. And over a period of time, over these last few months, I can only say that we've become better at what we do. Practice makes one perfect. And the
absolutely.
children have been very cooperative. And, honestly, the online experience, besides, of course, helping us to learn something new, most of us, to learn something new, which is great. I think educators haven't been posed many challenges in the recent past because everything has been pretty hunky-dory, nothing, to stir, to disturb us. You've had the children in the classes, you've had your smart boards, you've had this and that, and you've managed. Today, without the physical presence of those children in front of you, my goodness, you've been thrown off balance. But I'm
Right.
very happy the challenge came, because I think we educators need to shake ourselves up. Otherwise, we can become very complacent
True.
about a lot of things. And it helped us to reinvent ourselves, which was great. But the most beautiful part was, at least for me, I mean, and I teach class 12, and the fact that I could see my wonderful children. I could chat with them, and
Mm.
it was such fun. So
Right.
learning plus that interaction was
Mm.
um, was great. One couldn't have asked for anything more. And of course, online instruction is, of course, classes. We believe we have tried to deliver an online curriculum, which is not only academics.
Mm.
Um, means we have sports, we've
Mm.
had a number of activities
Mm.
beautifully executed by teachers, of course, but mainly by the children. We believe very strongly in Mayo that the girls take the lead. So we've had several discussions with the senior students, and they've led the way. So there've been a lot of online activities that they've led. So it's been a curriculum which has been actually, what should I say, transmitted across an online platform, not only academics. That's not, we don't believe in being unidimensional. Just like a child isn't, education isn't either. So,
Absolutely.
that's how we've coped. We are still coping. Children now are getting restless. They want to come back to school. And honestly, if I had a chance, I'd love to have them back
I
because
mean,
it's so depressing without them.
I think we all are restless now. So true. Absolutely would be missing this.
Yes. So,
Something
yes.
so beautiful that, it's the attitude that matters. And also,
Yes.
a true leader is one who creates more leaders. And as
Yes.
you said, your students have been leading the way as well here
Yes.
and in
Yes.
other ways, because a true leader doesn't make followers, a true leader makes leaders. On
Right.
that, I'm going to call our leader and our coach, Jerry Almeida, on here to give us more insights. Mojosh Inspirator here to give us
Okay.
more, as we call it,
Okay.
more insights. And we have had some, I have loved the conversation with you. Lovely talking to you. And over to you, Jerry. Welcome.
Yes, namaste and thank you so much. Brilliant. So great listening to you, ma'am. Brilliant insights.
Thank you. My
Yes,
pleasure. And it's been lovely conversing with Bami too also. It's been great.
right. It was
Yes.
is a great conversationalist. I am
Thank you
not.
so much.
I'm only a provocateur. So
Okay.
I provoke people.
Okay.
He too converses.
All right.
So so all the dirty jobs come to me.
I was going to say now, it was the good cop, I'm the bad cop.
Yes.
We say
All
that.
right.
I was very happy to hear about you speaking about empathy, etc., and
Yes.
how children have it and how the world probably has it. And before I share my insights on that, is there anything that you want to share more on that?
On empathy,
Empathy.
um, with respect to the children,
No, no,
or
just
with respect to,
generally.
oh yes, empathy. I think if you're not empathetic towards others, I wonder how good a human being one can honestly be, because one has to try at least. One
Right,
has to try and understand others, and try and see things from their perspective as well. The fact is, we impose our views and opinions,
right,
and we bring our own even feelings to situations without, but those are ours. Rather than feeling with a person,
right,
we tend to um, just get our own thought processes into play. But
right,
empathy is important. Empathy is extremely important, because that is when you are and you can be a sensitive human being. That
right,
is when you will think for that person and think about that person and whatever that person is going through.
right. And if you remember in the awards function last year,
Yes,
when I had come in post lunch
right.
to ensure that all of you all stay awake, before
Right.
the before the awards happened, which
Huh,
which was the time slot given to me,
huh.
and I I had actually started the entire session about how the world is full of apathy. If you remember, I'd shown a clip of this movie called The Book
Mhm,
of Henry, right?
mhm,
And where
mhm,
little Henry is teaching his
mhm.
mom
Right,
that there was something wrong happening in that supermarket and you
right,
did not intervene. And
right.
she says, but it's not our concern. And he says that the biggest problem of the world is
Yes.
not conflict, war, corruption, whatever you see. I mean, the world is not such a nice place, though many would like you to say, like you to think that see the positive in the world. And I think
Hmm,
that is bunkum again, because the world, the positive is very less in the world,
hmm,
right? And I do appreciate the positive thought of seeing the positive in the world, but I find that positive thought to be very negative, because if
hmm,
everybody just starts seeing the positive in the world and not accept that there is a lot of negativity in the
hmm,
world, acknowledge that and try to change that, then
hmm,
we are going to get only more negative, and that little positive which is left will also get completely washed out, right?
hmm, hmm, hmm.
And the reason I'm connecting this is because while children, empathy is now the most essential skill of the future.
Yes.
And like I always say in my leadership talks and workshops, that it's a very sad situation and very telling about how the human race has shaped,
Hmm.
if we have to teach human beings empathy now,
Right.
because human beings are supposed to be born with empathy,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
Empathy
Yes.
is a trait which is there within you. That's why
Right.
human beings can love. That's why human beings are family animals. That's why they're social animals. That's why they are
Right.
rational animals. And unfortunately, the animals who are not rational and more sentient than human beings, which is all the animal kingdom,
Hmm.
they have more empathy than us.
Hmm.
So somewhere our reasoning power and our rationale, the human
Hmm.
beings are
Hmm.
described as rational animals in
Hmm.
biology. Somewhere that rationale kills our empathy as we
Hmm.
grow, right?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
as you grow, we are taught to become survivors. We are taught all this nonsense like survival of the fittest.
Right.
It's a rat race, so you have to stay ahead. And
Hmm.
slowly the empathy dies out.
Yes.
And that's the reason empathy has become the most essential skill of the future.
Hmm.
Now, I know that skilling is very important, and that's what we do in corporate trainings. And I always joke with people that because you all were not taught empathy and emotional intelligence, people like
Hmm.
me have employment. But it's a very tough task to teach people who have that much baggage over the years of being in this mindless rat race, to teach them to be empaths again,
Hmm.
right? So I think the entire parenting system and the modern education system
Hmm.
needs overhauling.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It
Hmm.
needs to be overhauled. And of course, it doesn't help that you have a lot of fly by night, overnight gurus who love being on the internet all over the place, who actually say that the school and the college system is redundant because you have knowledge all over Google. Well, Google doesn't have knowledge, Google has information,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I think that's the first thing that you have to address people like Gary Vee, because his videos are even forwarded by teachers and educators.
Hmm.
Because Google is not knowledge,
Hmm. Hmm.
Google is purely information. Information is not knowledge.
True.
What to do with the information is knowledge,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And that
Yes.
knowledge is again half baked if you don't know how to apply it.
Hmm.
To go back to my favorite example again, a matchstick looks so small and fragile and puny, but if the matchstick is put in the burj, which is your tallest building in the world, in the right place, it will burn the burj down.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
at the same time, in a crowded stadium with one matchstick, you can illuminate the entire stadium. And that has been the Karmavir philosophy. Now, the reason I'm going all around the place is because I'm trying to figure, where does this empathy get lost? what happens to the same students who you're speaking about today, that they have the empathy today?
mm,
What
mm,
happens to them the moment they step into that corporate or working world where they become career mules?
mm,
And what happens to their empathy then?
mhm,
And frankly, is the empathy currently truly empathy, or is it an other way to score brownie points because you need to show it in your college education?
mm,
I'm provoking thoughts. I'm not making a statement. It's a question,
mm,
and I
mm,
would like some candid answers.
mm. Well, if I go by what you said about college admissions, yes, we do know that a very big component of, not a big, but an important component of an application which a student submits for a college admission
Right,
does entail, say, social service or community service. So a lot of students have walked down that path today
right, right,
in recent past
right,
because they feel that it is imperative to at least show something on their
right,
CVs,
right,
right? But having said that, that there are, I mean, one has encountered so many children. So yes, it is very difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff. You know, that is
right,
true. I agree.
right,
But it has become a norm that you must have a component of social service which shows up on your CV when you apply, especially abroad, and which is why children are involved in 1,001 things around social service and community service.
right,
That is there because I know there's so many letters of recommendation which one when one is asked to write,
right,
in which the students are always talking about, ma'am, this aspect needs to be covered, and of
right,
course they're involved in it in
right,
school.
right,
uh, but you know, it's mixed feelings because it's very difficult to make out who is truly genuine,
right,
as you're asking, you're talking about that, and who isn't. Because I have seen, as I said earlier, it's very strange. I'll see a child who will come running to me if she feels, even if a bird is hurt, for example, or if a child is hurt,
right,
right? It
right,
just is something instinctive that is not put on. I mean,
right,
you can, I mean, that's what I feel, what I see that child and she comes in. I have seen children sitting next to a child who is not feeling good, who's
right,
just sitting next to her to make her feel happier, to
right,
make her feel good.
right,
And why does she have to spend that time? Why does
right,
she have to bother? She's
right,
not going to gain anything from it,
right,
but she does that.
right,
So there have been instances, and in a residential school, one gets to see it.
right,
One gets to see it.
right.
But yes, there are adults also. I feel I agree with you that who make their children also quite cynical. It's
Right,
not worth it.
right.
I've
हाँ,
experienced.
because the typical language is देखो दुनिया ऐसे ही चलती है.
Yes,
The
and
world
no,
is like that,
yes,
right? So without really knowing what the world is, a
yeah,
person sitting in a Gurgaon or a Ajmer will
yes.
teach their children how the world is. That's the sad part.
Yes, and it's a sort of like you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. No one really does it. Why must you?
Right.
Why must you bother? Be with the crowd rather than be alone, you know,
Absolutely.
which is not right.
And these are the same people who go to temples, churches, mosques, and gurudwaras.
And that is sad because I think every religion basically teaches you service and caring for mankind.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
Empathy
Yes.
is the golden rule of humanity. Do unto
Yes.
others as you would
Yes.
want them to do unto you, which in
Very true.
some version or other is taught in every religion. Now, here's the big insight for
Yes.
you, ma'am. In a
Yes.
crowded room, whether it is 50 people or 50,000 people,
Yes.
I have less than 1% hands going up. 1% hands going up. Sometimes no hands going up at all.
Mm,
And even the hands which go up, they don't know the golden rule of humanity.
mm,
And they are far from knowing what is the basic responsibility of a human being.
right.
And they come up with things like love thy neighbor. And I'm like, yeah, that is nice. Everybody likes to love their neighbors, but that's not the golden rule of humanity. I'm saying it in the lighter way now, right?
Mm,
Because the golden rule of humanity is, how do you create a earth which is better than
mm,
what I was born into? If not
yes.
better, at least preserve it to be as good. Which means if
Yes.
I'm taking resources from earth, I need to replenish them. Not because it is
Yes.
selfless, not because it is altruistic, not because it is charitable, because my children will live in the same earth. So it
Yes.
is selfish. And that's why I always say, people were selfish, they would have understood how to preserve earth better. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
fact of the matter is that the only animal in the world today which does not contribute to the preservation of Earth, leave alone creating a better Earth, is the human being. And
True.
yet we tell our children, don't behave like animals,
Mm,
when we should actually be telling children, please behave like animals, right?
mm,
Because
mm,
they are better off than us.
mm.
And and
Very
and
true.
and I think somewhere it is not just a India problem. India faces a bigger problem because we are also a earth, a place which is syncretic traditions, syncretic cultures. We are not real. We are very artificial. You know what I mean? And we
Mm,
think we are real. We think we are real,
mm,
including with our religious beliefs and blind beliefs. So we are passing those same blind beliefs and limitations onto our children.
mm,
All right. But around the world, not just in India, but around the world, I think it's the nature, nurture, and
mm,
culture which is being inculcated at home,
mm.
schools, and colleges, which is the three F's: fatalistic, futile, and frivolous.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Frivolous because it's mostly teaching you only how to be materialistic
Mm-hmm.
and consumers, right?
Mm,
It's teaching you career, etc., but it's not teaching you how to be contributors, better citizens, etc., right? Frivolous because it's teaching you how to it's like we've just recreated that entire song K Sera Sera because it's teaching you how to be handsome, how to be rich, how to be fair and lovely, fair and handsome, fair
mm,
armpits and all that kind of
mm,
nonsense.
mm,
And fatalistic because it is teaching you that you are a creation or some kind of uh, person whose life is decided already by destiny,
mm-hmm.
by some god or some heavens above, which is completely bizarre
Mm,
because there is nobody who's created your destiny. You are the master of your destiny, you are the captain of your fate,
mm,
right?
mm,
so
mm,
so and then you have, this was this is, I'm going to share this with you.
mm,
I'm going to put it up on screen.
mm,
And a lot of people attribute this to Dr. Chaim Jinot, uh, who was also
mm,
a survivor from the Holocaust. But this is cited in his book, Teacher and Child.
mm.
And he says, I'm a survivor of a concentration camp.
Yeah.
My eyes saw what no man should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers, infants killed by trained nurses, women and babies shot and burned by high school and college graduates. So I'm suspicious of education. My request is help your students to become human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, and educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children
Mm,
more human. And unfortunately, the human element is
mm,
not so well covered in the education curriculum.
mm,
So, what are your insights on that?
mm. Well, I think, as I had earlier mentioned, the human element to be covered in a curriculum, I'm not saying in the formal curriculum, though the NEP, interestingly enough, when I was reading it, is talking a lot about building of character.
Right,
Right? I don't
right,
think they've mentioned the methodology per se, but yes, they've talked about value based education
right,
and the building of character. But
right,
I think children learn most by, everyone learns most by observing
right,
and by imbibing. You
right,
can't tell a child, you jolly well be honest,
right.
right? So they have to see it in action. And it
Absolutely.
has to happen in its own beautiful, subtle manner.
Right,
And it has to happen as with the flow, so to speak, it happens. So for which, that is the thing, a teacher is not only one who is imparting knowledge or information about a particular discipline. She is a person who, or he is a person who has a big role to play, a very, very big role to play.
right,
And I keep using that expression, which is a very cliched and common expression of walking the talk, but it is necessary
right,
because every child is watching you and they are so observant.
right,
And any gap between what you say and how you behave is going to
Right.
lead to confusion in the mind of the child, and that is when the question marks are going to arise, that what exactly is the truth, what exactly should be followed, what is it that is imperative, what
Right.
is that which is necessary.
Right.
So definitely, I mean, these are things
Right.
which require to be looked at.
And
When Yes.
and I'm happy you brought that up, because that's exactly what our simple line is all about. It sounds like a very simple line, but it is like a statement loaded with insights. And like I always say in my talks, that it's all guns fully loaded, all puns fully intended. Great
Hmm.
parents make great leaders,
Mm.
because you don't become a great parent or a great teacher by preaching and telling.
Exactly.
You must be, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, what is happening for youngsters, and more so in our culture, and when you mentioned the NEP, and this is going to be very provocative now,
Mm.
because when you mentioned the NEP, my fear factor of the NEP is that when
Mm.
these people, when I say these people, the current government,
Yes.
right from the prime minister to the home minister to all the so-called good men in parliament and in the office today, they have a very different agenda when they talk about character education. And I'm going to say it
Yes.
straight. It's a RSS agenda, and that's not
Hmm.
character. That's not
Hmm.
character at all, because again, you're compartmentalizing people, right?
Hmm.
That's not the human factor. The human
Hmm.
factor does not belong to Christianity or Hinduism or any religion. The human
Right.
factor is simply about insaniyat, about being a
Yes.
good human,
Human
and
being.
not being
Right.
human like Salman Khan wearing t-shirts. It's about being humane, which means
Yes.
responsible, accountable, empathic, human, and
Yes.
caring, right? Caring for the environment, for all living beings, and for fellow human beings. So that is where our character education comes in. So the NEP is at one level very scary for me, because the current government has already started twisting and changing things in the constitution, and I'm scared, right?
Hmm.
It's about, and I can't blame them, because the bad precedent was set by another government, which is the Congress government, with the emergency. So when you do things like that, the democratic values of a country get compromised. And I say this because I'm non-partisan and apolitical, but as a citizen, politics is a part of the DNA, right? Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I'm going to relate it to a simple incident. When you have the leaders of a country, whether it's business leaders or political leaders, who are in the limelight, or celebrities who are in the limelight all the time, who are misleading you with all fake news and fake propaganda and fakery and fudgery all the time, then that becomes the culture of the country. And that
Hmm.
becomes what youngsters start absorbing. So you suddenly have a youngster who says, I invented a drone,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
the German company calls him out.
Hmm.
You suddenly have a youngster somewhere in the back of beyond of India who says, I learned English in the last 1 week. And
Hmm.
the media laps it up and reports it as a great achievement. And then 6 months later, you get to know it was complete lies and fakery, right? Now, these fake incidents with students making false claims have suddenly started kind of growing and mushrooming in the country.
Hmm.
And I think that's completely related to what you just said, because people are saying something else and doing something else.
Hmm.
You see it in schools now. I mean, what do you say of a school which invites a person like Salman Khan as the chief guest,
Hmm.
or a sexual molester and author called Jeffrey Archers,
Hmm.
who's had so many Me Too cases slapped against him, being invited as a chief guest? There's a problem, because it's not just about, because when we say great parents make great leaders, it's because that also applies to teachers, because you are a parent in school,
Yes.
especially
Yes.
in a boarding school. You're more than a parent,
Very
right?
true. Very
Because,
true.
right, so how does that balance out? Because on one side you want to do something, and
Hmm.
you as a principal may be upright, but then you see the school owner who behaves in a sycophantic way in front of a corrupt minister,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I was in this education function in Jammu, where I had several school owners and principals absolutely behaving in a very undignified way, bowing down to the and to a minister who in his talk says I'm corrupt and that's the way I have become a minister. You have
Yeah.
to find whoever you have to find ways of how to get there, right? So
Mhm.
how does this balance out?
I think a lot of it depends on what you are as a person. I think there's some of us who won't even allow, I mean, we will not bow. The whole thing, I mean, that's the thing. When you weigh what is important, uh, first and foremost, you weigh that against this. And if it's something which is absolutely alien to your value system and the way you've been brought up and what you strongly believe in, I don't think we could be sycophantic in front of these people. We
Right.
cannot, after all, run ourselves down as human beings in our own
Absolutely.
eyes.
Absolutely.
Because
Because
at the end of the day, my father used to always tell me one thing. He said, at the end of the day, ask yourself, can you look yourself in the mirror?
absolutely.
Right? That is so important. And if you can
We're
do
on the
that,
same page. We're on the
so
same page.
that's
Yeah.
the thing. So I think if something is so alien to our value system, it's not worth pursuing.
Right.
That is not worth pursuing, and not all the jewels and gold and money of the world is worth sacrificing what you basically stand for.
And I'm
I think.
happy you
And
said that because that's exactly what my thought process is. Because, like I always say, dignity is non negotiable. You
yes,
cannot
I agree.
compromise your dignity. And that's
Very
exactly what
true.
you're saying.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
No, I
No, so
just
that.
wanted to endorse that because I mean it's nice because uh, sometimes you hear educators say that in a talk,
Hmm,
and just a little while ago you observed them being sycophantic with people.
right.
So so it
That's
completely
hypocrisy. That's
that
being very
that
hypocritical.
that duplicity kills you,
Yes,
and then you
yes,
don't know what to do. And me being me, because I'm upfront and straightforward, when I go up on stage I actually say it to them that
true.
you all spoke so much about dignity and
Right.
self-respect and everything, but a few minutes ago you all were behaving so in such an undignified manner with the minister.
Very true. Yes.
And yes, by all means, because he's a state representative and a public office, be
Hmm,
respectful, but you don't need to bow down to him.
exactly.
I used to have
Exactly.
my biggest problem with Manmohan Singh was that he used to bow down to Rahul Gandhi.
Hmm.
You're my prime minister, God damn it.
Hmm.
Don't do that,
Hmm.
right?
Very
Because
true.
the country is watching you. What has
Yes.
Rahul Gandhi done to even deserve that?
Yes.
Be respectful, but don't bow down to him like he's your my baap.
Very true. Very true.
That kills it, and that is my one grouse which I will take to my grave about Manmohan Singh. So and then the entire office got compromised like that, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now, of course, currently everybody has to bow down like that because that's how Mota Bai and Chota Bai are, right?
Hmm.
But but what I'm
Hmm.
trying to say is that dignity and swabiman, the English word is swabiman,
Very true.
and
Yes.
it is sad for us. And I'm going to close with this. It is sad that as a country where this dignity was rooted into our system and culture by
Yes.
a giant who
Hmm.
walked this land called Dr. Rabindranath Tagore, who said, where the mind
Yes.
is without fear and the
Yes.
head is held high, you
True.
don't find that in the country anymore with
Hmm.
1.3 billion Indians. You don't find that,
Yeah. That's true.
right?
It's very unfortunate. Yes.
And it really hurts that in a country of 1.3 billion Indians, every minister or nincompoop who's running for that office, and I'm not kind towards them at all,
Hmm.
because they're all saying this is what you saw in the last election. Everyone said, right from Congress to Aam Aadmi Party to BJP to God knows how many parties we have, I am the only one.
Hmm.
हम ही हैं जो इस देश को आगे लेके चल सकते हैं. So I wrote an article in Business World. I said
Hmm.
1.3 billion
Hmm.
into brackets. I wrote important and then wrote no into brackets, not important, but important Indians,
Hmm.
which means that we are nobody.
Hmm.
But then who has done that to ourselves? I think we as a public, we the people have done it to ourselves because we have compromised our own dignity where we let this fools get away with murder,
Yes.
right? You
Yeah.
can see it in in the current scenario, ma'am. You can see it. I mean, the country is struggling.
Yes.
GDP is at a negative double digit, almost 25%.
Hmm.
There is no employment. and the entire country is discussing justice for Sushant Singh Rajput and justice for Ria. How does it matter?
Hmm.
And these are educated Indians. I have actually
Hmm.
blocked so many people on Facebook because they keep fighting with me that it's murder. You're not standing up for him. I'm like, you know what? With all due respect, I give dignity to the dead soul. But he was not such a great guy.
Hmm.
Just because you listen to all this, drivel, don't let it go through your head. Yes, he's okay. I mean, he died. It's okay, fine. He killed himself. So what are we crying about? Because I mean, what happened to all the migrant labor who died when the exodus happened? You never saw them. Nobody
Hmm.
cried about them, right? So I think somewhere as a country we've gone really, really in the wrong direction. I don't know what your insights on this. Share that, and then we'll close, ma'am.
Well, again, if I uh, I'm sorry to say, my father, I think I'd love to have had this conversation with you, because there's one thing you told me before, a couple of years before he passed away, and he said, this country has become morally spineless.
Absolutely.
This is what he told me. And and he was a person who, I mean, he was born in 1931, so he'd seen the freedom struggle. He was 16 when freedom came. He'd seen the struggles, he'd experienced racial discrimination. We are a family from Bombay. He would tell me stories about how Indians were not allowed to use the footpath, things like that. Plus, of course, other experiences, all these things. And how idealist, what great idealistic people they were, that freedom would bring in a new dawn for this country, and
Right.
life would be wonderful. And he just said, look at, I mean, he just said, look at what we got ourselves into now.
Right.
We have become so spineless as a nation.
Right.
And there is a sort of a, there's like a drought of good leadership, you know that
Right.
also. So I used to hear these things which he would utter, and yes, I think that's true. You have too much of arrogance. You have too much of arrogance with people arrogating to themselves rights which they don't honestly deserve. That's what, like politicians, for example, or others as well.
The
And
entitlement.
yes, and humility being something which is gone underground, and the
Absolutely.
ability to care for others or learn from others underground. So, I mean, I feel our schools at least are small havens of some form of idealism.
Very
And
nice.
therefore, as educators, as teachers, or, as I was telling Mami too, the guru is both the student and the teacher. I mean, the
Absolutely.
adult,
Absolutely.
both of
Absolutely.
us. We've got to keep it alive.
That's
And
what we believe in. Absolutely. It's
yes,
a
and
mentor
that's
mentee and a cycle.
right. So
It's
that's
not a
so we've got to
hierarchy
keep
here.
it alive, so that I'd hate it if my children become cynical from day one. As it is, the world outside is not going to be a pleasant place once they move out. But we don't want them to be cynics now, and we want to prepare them to be
Right.
strong to
Right.
change things once they move out.
Right.
They are up against tremendous challenges, undoubtedly, where everything, I mean, we keep talking about choosing the harder right against the easier wrong. In
Right.
school, we discuss these things, everything. But
Right.
yes, the world is a harsh place to live in, undoubtedly. And I find we are becoming very crude as a nation. Crude.
Right.
The way we speak, the
Right.
expressions we use, in public, whether it's a politician versus another politician, you find the language, it's pathetic.
Right.
There's nothing being even, you are not remotely refined in the way you express an opinion. You
Right.
can agree to disagree with dignity, but that's not happening anymore.
Right.
Everyone is shouting and screaming. If you have, even in parliament, an opposition, the opposition is to oppose, not to be a sounding board.
Right.
In a democratic process, an opposition was a sounding board, not a
Right.
person. It's literally taken as oppose, oppose, oppose. So don't want anything constructive to happen. So yes, as people, when we look at the entire scenario, total cleansing, has to happen.
Cleansing. I
And
like the word, and that's exactly what I wrote a book with PM Modi, and I told him it's not clean India which is required. We need to cleanse India. We got to put a
yes,
vacuum from below
yes,
up and clean the brain right out of all the crap that has got filled in. And
that's true.
I'm very happy that you brought that out. And I was going to ask you that those are your father's thoughts, and do you endorse them? Then you answered that for me by saying that
Yeah.
I completely believe that we have become morally spineless. I just want to end by asking your father's name and what did he do?
My father's name?
Yeah.
My father, his name is Madhav Khandke.
Okay.
And he was in fact straight after he went to the UK straight after World War II, became an automobile engineer,
Oh,
came
wow.
back home to Bombay,
Okay. Okay.
and then of course he got transferred to Calcutta. That's where I grew up. But he was an automobile engineer. Then he was
Okay.
also, after retirement, he was attached with Dunlop India,
Oh, I
with
see. Okay.
Dunlop. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
then once
Excellent.
he retired from Dunlop after a long innings there,
Right.
and we shifted to Pune. He was also a visiting lecturer at Symbiosis Institute of Management. So management studies was a very important area of the work he did.
Right.
So even in his career, he would go and give lectures. He would go to XLRI, for example, and of course after retirement too.
Very nice. Excellent.
And he's a classic case of a person who academically never did well. He
Right.
passed out of Sherwood. He
Right.
went to boarding school at the age of 5 because my
Right.
grandmother passed away.
Right.
And then he finally passed out of, he went to Nainital. Then World War II broke out. When I think of their lives, my God, they were so different. He was
Right.
brought back to St. Peter's, Panchgani. My grandfather said, be closer to Bombay. Went back to Sherwood, finished in 848.
Very nice.
And he academically never did well. But I'd like to see a person more intelligent than my father.
Excellent.
See, not because I'm his daughter, but
Right.
because I mean, that's exactly what our education system also needs to look
Right.
at. Your
And
marks
I,
on
and
that
I
mark
think
sheet, does
more than intelligent, your father was wise. And I always say this.
very
I wrote it in
wise,
my first book that modern education makes you intelligent, but does not give you wisdom.
very true.
Wisdom comes from your own life's journey of suffering and
Yes,
pain and empathy. Because
very
you know,
true.
I like the way, and I'm going to conclude with this by celebrating your father and Mr. Khanke's life. And this thought is from the Bhagavad Gita, and it says that consciousness and empathy is understanding the suffering and pain of others
Very true.
without it happening to you.
Yes,
I don't think there's a more powerful statement
very true.
to explain empathy, and it's so
Very true.
beautiful that it's understanding the pain and suffering of others
Very
without
true.
it happening to you, and that is wisdom. And I think your father had that. Thank you so
He did.
much,
He did.
and
He did.
pleasure conversing with you. Over to
Same
you and
here.
A2, and I've concluded my provocation.
Thank you. It was
Thank
a
you for those
pleasure.
brilliant insights, and I completely agree. We are morally spineless. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think we've had a brilliant, brilliant conversation today, and it was a pleasure having you. I don't want to say anything more because there is a lot of food for thought left to take away, and that would be the best thing. Thank you so much.
Namaste,
Pleasure.
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you so much. It was great for me also to speak with both of you and learn a lot from both of you as well. So thank
Thank you,
you.
Kanchanji, and
Thank
have a good
you.
evening. Have a good evening. See you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.